You don't just look at this painting, you step into it, and suddenly, nothing makes sense. A woman completely bare sits among two fully dressed men. She isn't draped in flowing silks, not bathed in soft divine light. She is not a goddess, not a muse, just a woman, sitting there nude as if it's the most ordinary thing in the world. One man gestures mid-conversation, the other looks on, indifferent. Behind them, another woman wades through the water eerily detached. It's a scene that feels both familiar and impossible. Real, yet completely out of place. This is Le Déjeuner Célèbre, Edouard Manet's 1863 masterpiece. A painting that shook the art world, not because of what it showed, but how it showed it. Nudes weren't new, but they belonged in mythology, in grand allegories, not sprawled on the grass in a casual picnic. And yet, here it was, towering, impossible to ignore. Its sheer size was just as audacious as the subject, stretching nearly 7 feet tall and over 8 feet wide, about 82 inches and 104 inches. To the public and the critics, this wasn't just offensive, it was literal chaos. The newspapers called it absurd, childish, incoherent. The composition was wrong, the colours were wrong, the subject was wrong. But what enraged them most? The way she sat there, unapologetic, meeting their gaze without shame. So was Manet mocking tradition, laughing in the face of artistic norms? Or was he daring us to stop hiding behind illusion and finally see things as they really were? Whatever his intention, the reaction was instant. And brutal. Ouch! Le Déjeuner Célèbre, or The Luncheon on the Grass as it's translated, started a scandal. Painted in 1863, this single work shook the art world to its core. Without it, Impressionism might have never taken shape, and without Impressionism, modern art as we know it wouldn't exist. Every painting has a story, and this one is anything but ordinary. Because to understand Le Déjeuner, you first have to understand the man behind it. Edouard Manet entered the world in 1832, born into privilege in the heart of Paris. His father, Auguste Manet, was a respected judge, a man of influence who expected his son to follow in his footsteps. But young Manet had other ideas. From an early age, he was drawn to art, fascinated by colours and forms in a way that no legal textbook could ever rival. It was his uncle, Edmond Fournier, who first noticed this passion and encouraged it, whisking the boy away to the Louvre, where the great masters seemed to whisper secrets through their brushstrokes. Given his father's rigid, conservative nature, one might expect Auguste to have crushed this artistic rebellion before it could take root. But strangely, he didn't. Instead, he did something unexpected. He supported his son financially, allowing him to pursue his creative ambitions. It was an unusual move for a man so steeped in tradition. Perhaps, just perhaps, Auguste had his reasons. Reasons that had nothing to do with generosity, and everything to do with keeping certain truths buried. Because, within the walls of the Manet household, there were many secrets. In the early 1850s, a young piano teacher named Suzanne Linoff was hired to give lessons to the Manet children, including Edouard. She was talented, charming, and as some whispered, more than just an instructor. By 1852, Suzanne had given birth to a son, Léon, a child born out of wedlock. And no one knows for certain who Léon's father was. The whispers that floated through the Parisian salons suggested two possibilities: either Edouard or his own father, Auguste. For years, the mystery remained unsolved. Suzanne continued to live in the Manet household, raising Leon under the family roof. The official story was that she was simply a devoted teacher and a trusted friend. Or was she? Was she something much more? The fact that Auguste never disowned her, never turned her away despite the scandal of an illegitimate child, speaks volumes. In 1863, shortly after Auguste's death, Edouard finally married Suzanne. Was it love? A long overdue commitment? Or a quiet attempt to sweep the past under the rug and solidify the family's narrative? Whatever the reason, the move only deepened the mystery. Leon, meanwhile, grew up in the shadow of these unanswered questions. He would later appear in several of Manet's paintings, depicted as an elegant, well-dressed young man, always slightly apart, always with an air of quiet ambiguity. Perhaps Manet was paying a tribute to him, or perhaps, through those brushstrokes, he was attempting to say something he never dared to speak aloud. Whatever the truth about Manet's personal life, it was a foreshadowing of the kind of artist he would become. One who rejected convention, one who refused to play by the rules. And Le Déjeuner Célèbre was just the beginning. This painting was never just about a naked woman having a picnic with two clothed men. The newspapers tore into it, calling it absurd, childish, even offensive. People hated the composition, the colours, the subject matter. But above all, they hated the way the woman sat there, completely unbothered. A nude in art was fine, as long as she was a goddess, a nymph, something otherworldly. But a real flesh and blood woman, seated among fully dressed men as if she had every right to be there, that was scandalous. How dare that woman? How dare the man who allowed that woman? She wasn't covering herself, wasn't looking away in modesty. She stared. Not shy, not demure, not even inviting, just direct, as if she was challenging the viewer to say something. That was what unsettled them the most. She didn't fit the script. There was no excuse, no mythological story to justify her nudity. She was just there, existing in the same space as the men, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. The scene itself was outrageous by the standards of the time. A woman like that, sitting half naked with two men? If this were real life, people would assume she was a prostitute. What other kind of women would be in such a situation? Her reputation would be in ruins. Yet, here she was, painted on a massive canvas, placed right in front of the public, as if daring them to react. Nudity in art had long been accepted, but only under the right conditions. Wrap it in Roman mythology, call it an allegory, and no one would bat an eyelid. But Manet wasn't playing by those rules. He wasn't interested in making it palatable for the audience. He wanted to strip away the illusion. Maybe that's why the painting feels so deliberately provocative. Manet knew exactly what he was doing. He knew how the public would react. Maybe he had seen enough of society's hypocrisy to know how easily people turned a blind eye to reality while clinging to their artificial morals. Maybe he had watched his own father do the same. Manet didn't often pluck his subjects from his imagination. He painted people he knew. The two men lounging in the grass weren't just artistic stand-ins. They were his own brother, Eugene Manet, and his brother-in-law, Ferdinand Leanoff. But here, they played the role of art students, a fitting choice considering both had connections to the creative world. At the time, young art students had a habit of dressing in eccentric outfits, playing the part of rebellious intellectuals. The man on the right, with his ridiculous hat, was a perfect example. Any Parisian would have recognised the type instantly. Then there was the woman at the centre of it all, the one who refused to look away, Victorine Meurre. She wasn't just another model, she was the model. A young Parisian who had been posing for painters since she was 16, Victorine would become Manet's most famous muse. She wasn't a passive, idealised beauty meant to fade into the background. She was the Olympia that would send shockwaves through the art world. The woman in The Railway, the street performer in Street Singer, the striking figure in Woman with a Parrot. She gave Manet's art a face, a presence, a quiet defiance that unsettled audiences time and time again. And she was also a respected artist in her own right. In fact, in 1876, her paintings were selected for inclusion at the Paris Salon's juried exhibition, when Manet's work was not. But while all eyes are drawn to her, the background holds its own quiet rebellion. A proportionally enormous woman stands in the water, leaning forward as if reaching for something. Manet wasn't interested in poetic illusions here, though. Parisians knew exactly what she was doing. She's popped into the river to have a pee. A proportionally enormous one, we can imagine.
Oh my God.
In a mythological painting, she might have been a nymph, gracefully pouring water from a jug, a symbol of purity and renewal. But in this painting, there was no grand symbolism, no delicate pose, just an everyday act stripped of pretense. A whopping great woman, pouring water from herself and having a rinse. Because this was the thing, Manet wasn't hiding anything. He had no interest in painting a world that didn't exist. And he wasn't the first to use art as a way of bending reality either. Because Le Déjeuner wasn't plucked from thin air, it was built on the bones of a painting that came before it. Manet took inspiration from the Pastoral Concert, a painting attributed to either Titian or Giorgione. In that work, two clothed men, musicians, sit in a dreamy, idealised landscape, enjoying the company of two nude women. But they exist here not as real figures, but as muses, ethereal and untouchable. The scene is soft, decadent, luxurious. Manet, on the other hand, had no interest in fantasy. His figures weren't muses, they were ordinary Parisians. Flesh and blood people tangled up in something far less refined. He painted them not in a world of poetry, but in a scene that felt all too real, an afternoon that looked more like an orgy than an artistic gathering. If the Pastoral Concert was a celebration of beauty, Le Déjeuner Célèbre was a confrontation with raw, unfiltered desire. But while the Pastoral Concert shaped the theme, the composition itself came from somewhere else. Manet borrowed the structure from the Judgment of Paris, an engraving by Marcantonio Raimondi, based on a design by Raphael. A work so deeply rooted in tradition, so respected, so safe. And that's where Manet's genius lay. He used the very framework of the old masters to create something that mocked the system from within. He took their weapon and turned it on them, and watched as the audience recoiled. Le Déjeuner upset most people, but the photographic lighting and the roughly painted style was taken up with gusto by the Impressionists. They realised that these methods meant they could complete a painting in one sitting, revolutionising artistic thinking. And as we said at the start, without Impressionism, modern art as we know it wouldn't exist. His Nude was not a goddess, not an idealised Venus. She was something new, something real. Maybe he intended to shock, maybe he didn't. We'll never know for sure. But what's clear is that this painting wasn't just about art, it was personal. Manet had lost faith, not just in the art world, but in the moral society claimed to uphold. A world that preached virtue while hiding its own corruption. a father who built his life on respectability while living a lie. With Le Déjeuner Célèbre, Manet wasn't just painting a scene, he was exposing the cracks in the world around him. But was he revealing society's hypocrisy, or daring us to admit our own? Maybe Manet himself said it best. So they'd prefer me to do a nude, would they? Fine, I'll do them a nude. Then I suppose they'll really tear me to pieces. He did. And they did also. Manet knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the backlash was coming and he did it anyway. So what do you think? Was Manet defying the art world? Mocking it? Or simply painting the truth as he saw it? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw here, please tap the like button and subscribe to our channel for more of art's wonders.